One, two, 1, 2, 3, and.
Love you.
We're here to deliver a lunch for the Pottstown Hospital today.
I hope this song brings you encouragement.
I miss all of you.
I hope you're all doing well, and I can't wait to see your faces in a few months.
We can find light at the end of this tunnel.
Embrace our strength, embrace the time that we've been given to spend with loved ones.
All you guys are staying safe.
Someday, very soon, we will be back together.
I can't wait to see you all soon.
I thought we get this next unit off to a running start.
I hope everybody is ready to do some math today.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's good to see you here. Well, I'm trying to get to the next slide. There we go. Good evening from the Hill School. Thanks so much for making time on Friday evening to attend the Headmaster's Roundtable. We have quite a crowd tonight, almost 300 families registered. So I'm excited to share some news and some updates with you, but most importantly, I want to send my warm greetings and hope that everyone is doing well and getting through this time together and spending time with family. Tonight, we have a pretty packed agenda. I want to give you an understanding of how we are hoping to open our campus in the fall. Once we open, how we intend to sustain a healthy campus, what gives Hill an advantage in this area, an overall timeline so you can know what to expect in the coming weeks and months. And then hopefully we'll have quite a bit of time for Q&A after that. So if you'd like to, while I'm going along, you're welcome to add a question in the Q&A box, and you can also raise your hand. I probably won't stop the presentation until the end in terms of questions and answers. My sense is that many of your questions will get answered during the presentation, but hopefully we'll have some good opportunity to have a dialogue and interact tonight. How are we going to open campus? Obviously, it's on everyone's mind, and we are working hard at that. So tonight, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our planning committees, our continuity planning committees, getting to the green phase here in Pennsylvania, learning from already open and opening schools around the country and around the world. I'm going to talk a little bit about viral network analysis, something that we're working on here at Hill, and then how we're making the case for boarding schools to open and not be included in blanket closure orders in Pennsylvania. So first and foremost, I want to let you know that we have been hard at work planning for this for several months now. We have created 5 subcommittees as part of our continuity planning, and each of these continuity planning committees has approximately 6 or 7 staff and faculty, plus 2 co-chairs, an administrative professional, and then all the co-chairs meet on a weekly basis to compile the information and make sure that everything is coordinated. Our 5 committees are an academics committee, a residential and student life committee, health, wellness, and safety, finances, operations, and facilities, and community, co-curricular, and events. So those committees are hard at work, and I'm grateful to the faculty and staff who are working on that. For those of you who are here in Pennsylvania, this may be fairly familiar to you. For those of you in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, I assume that you have some similar structure in your state or your country. The governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Wolf, who's a Hill graduate, class of 1967, has established 3 levels or 3 phases, red, yellow, and green. Until today, the whole state was in red, which was a stay-at-home order and the closure of non-essential or non-life sustaining businesses. As of today, May 8th, the states in yellow you see there on the screen have gone to a sort of a secondary phase, which is aggressive mitigation, but the stay-at-home order has been lifted. The red states are still in the stay-at-home order, and obviously the area we're trying to get to is the green level, which we hope will be rolled out over time. As of right now, we don't know exactly when Montgomery County, which is, you see the Hill logo there, when that will be turned to yellow. Governor Wolf automatically renewed the stay-at-home order for all of the red counties through June 4th. It's our understanding that that is not necessarily, it could be sooner than that. We're hopeful that it will be within 1 or 2 weeks. We do think that we're going to be towards the end of the reopening. We were at the very beginning of the closure, and because our county stretches south close to Philadelphia, where there are a lot of cases, we're anticipating that we'll be one of the last counties to open, but that it'll be within the next couple of weeks. Montgomery County does have a significant number of cases, or has had a significant number of cases, but most of them are down towards Philadelphia. Pottstown has been relatively light in terms of the number of cases and the number of fatalities. We are doing everything we can to learn from schools around the United States and also in other parts of the world that have already opened or are about to open. Primarily, there are two sets of schools that we're looking at. First of all, the Australian boarding schools have started to reopen this week. We're fortunate that John Genikis, our Dean of Community Life, is Australian and has a lot of contacts, has worked in Australian boarding schools. And so we're starting to see the plans and the data coming out of Australia, and we'll continue to monitor that in the next few weeks to see how they're doing. Also here, right here in Pennsylvania, not too far away in Hershey, Pennsylvania, is the Milton Hershey School, a very large boarding school, an all boarding school for students in, I think, grades kindergarten through 12th. They have 1,500 students at the school. It's for very high risk, underserved youth from across Pennsylvania. So they do have a special mission, but when the shutdown occurred, they were allowed to continue operations. And of their 1,500 students, I believe 500 remained on campus, and they brought even more back in the last week or two. They have had not a single case of COVID occur on their campus through community spread, and we have access to their transition documents and planning documents, and I'm in regular contact with the president of the school. We are also working quite closely with TABS, which is the Association of Boarding Schools. It's a national organization with approximately 250 boarding schools here in the United States and Canada. So we're in regular contact with them as they work to help all of our boarding schools in the United States reopen and plan accordingly. So we think there's a lot to be learned, and there's some models out there that we are learning from. This is something I'm actually very excited about. It's a little bit of my nerd side coming out, but recently there was an article published in the Chronicle of Higher Education by Kim Whedon. Dr. Whedon is a professor of sociology at Cornell University, and she and one of her counterparts at the University of Michigan mapped the classroom data for Cornell University in terms of the viral network and how easily the virus COVID-19 would spread at Cornell if left unchecked. And all they looked at was classrooms. They did not look at the other aspects of a college campus, such as dormitories or dining hall or co-curricular programs or extracurricular programs or just social life. Basically with 22,000 students and something like, I think it's almost 1,000 courses, the computing power they needed to detail those multiple layers was just too much for them to do. So I reached out to Dr. Whedon to see if she would have a conversation with us, and she and her colleague are considering working with us and using Hill as a demonstration site to model multiple layers of viral network, which would allow us to first and foremost be able to distinguish the Hill from other types of schools that may be closed next year or under stricter orders. We think we can make a case for why a boarding school is a safer environment. Also, it can allow us, help us measure different mitigation strategies, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, and how those might keep us even safer than we are in our status quo situation. So we're hopeful to get that kicked off pretty soon so that we can start analyzing that. So we're excited to work with Dr. Whedon and at Cornell. We do think that there's probably a likelihood that we will need to make our case to the state of Pennsylvania why we should be allowed to remain open. Hopefully they will recognize that all schools should be allowed to open in the fall and under some guidelines and some supervision. Yesterday, actually I think it was a couple days ago on May 6th, the state of Connecticut issued a report from their higher education subcommittee in terms of how to reopen colleges and universities within the state of Connecticut. We were very excited to see this report, first of all, because it was quite promising for colleges and universities, and many of our students are attending those universities in Connecticut, but also because they included boarding schools in their report as being comparable to residential colleges and universities and under the same guidelines. So we are hopeful that Pennsylvania will take Connecticut's lead. We have forwarded this report already to the Secretary of Education in Pennsylvania, Secretary Rivera, and we're hopeful that they will follow that lead. In addition to that, we're working closely with the Pennsylvania Association of Independent Schools. The Hill is leading a subset of 15 boarding schools in Pennsylvania. And we hope to compile a set of guidelines and threshold conditions, as well as what Connecticut called gating conditions, things that have to exist within our state and the support that we need from the state and public health officials to reopen. As I mentioned earlier, Governor Wolf is a Hill graduate. We do have the ability to be in touch with him, which is helpful. I don't think he's going to do anything out of the ordinary for the Hill just because it's his alma mater, but we do have a way to at least get an audience with him, which is quite helpful. So that's part of the reason why we're taking the lead with the other boarding schools. Assuming that we can make our case and reopen in the fall, the question will be, how do we sustain a healthy campus, which is also part of our argument for why we can open. And so that we can avoid having to close campus or partially close campus throughout the year. So I'm going to be talking about 5 different aspects of sustaining a healthy campus. First is an overarching campus wellness framework, mitigation steps or procedures that we plan to take, testing and screening, which is part of mitigation really, contact tracing, and separation of individuals who are ill or under observation. I'm sure you've heard some of these terms in other publications and in the media, but I'm going to talk about how they pertain here at Hill. What I should mention is that these are concepts. We have not committed to any of these yet. We are exploring all of them, researching all of them, and hope to be able to use best practices. And as I said before, many peer schools are in the same boat, and we're in constant conversation with them as well. So nothing I say here tonight should be taken as a hard fact. These are just things that we are working on, and I just wanted to share some aspects of what things might look like next year at Hill. So first, we have developed 5 campus wellness levels. This is quite similar, like you might see on a military base, or you've seen something called ThreatCom or HPCon. These are different conditions that we will operate under next year. Alpha is our normal campus operation, sort of where we were maybe 3 months ago when things were pretty normal. That is likely to, we're likely to be at Alpha when there's a vaccine. We don't imagine that we'll be at Alpha until a vaccine is prevalent and available to our students and to our employees. Bravo condition is when there's minimal viral impact, both here on campus and within our community. Charlie is when there'd be moderate viral impact. Delta is when there would be substantial viral impact. And Zulu is when we would require campus closure. So for each of these campus wellness levels, our thought is that the various mitigation strategies that we might employ would become more and more strict, or less and less strict if we were de-escalating from that. We're not quite sure how long each one of these different campus wellness levels might last. It could be a day, it could be a week, it could be months. And we're hoping that we can open in Bravo and stay in Bravo and eventually move to Alpha. Again, those are just sort of a structure that we're operating under. So here again, I just want to mention that these are a variety of mitigation strategies that we're looking at. Nothing is concrete yet, but there are things that we're investigating quite rigorously. So first is the notion of an early arrival for some or all of our students, and this might be in phases or stages during the month of August. There is, even in the Connecticut plan, there was an indication that all students would have to essentially quarantine on campus for 14 days upon arrival, and that could be local students, distant borders, international students, and we know that there may be still some disruption in travel and visa availability, so we are looking at the possibility of opening campus and allowing students to come back as they can, and perhaps have to stay in the dormitory, stay in their room, have a limited opportunity to interact on campus to make sure that we can start the year with a healthy community. We're also looking at the overall school calendar. One of the things that makes a boarding school challenging, or at least the Hills calendar challenging, is that we are trimesters, that we have a number of small long weekends, so small vacations. We have several long vacations in quick succession, such as Thanksgiving and Christmas. And every time that our entire community leaves campus and comes back, we may have to do some of this quarantining or screening or health check, and that's quite complicated. We had a bit of that this year when we all left for the long winter weekend prior to the closure of campus, and that was quite onerous for our health and wellness team and our student life team. So we're looking at that. We may consider everything from semesters to not having short breaks, to having an early start, as I mentioned before, maybe a longer winter break when there may be a resurgence of the virus. So we're examining all of those kinds of things. We're also looking at our daily schedule. We are considering a variety of blended learning concepts where we might not meet 4 times a week like we normally do for classes. We might meet fewer times per week. That would eliminate some of the potential for exposure. It could also allow us to have smaller section sizes. And it also allows us, if we do have to leave campus for any period of time, that it would be easier to maintain, similar to where we are in Virtual Hill, instead of having to modulate between a live, a 100% synchronous or live plan that ran from 8 to 3:30 in the afternoon, and then back to an asynchronous or blended model. So we're looking at those kinds of things, also having longer periods for lunch. We're looking at block schedules. We're looking at perhaps using the weekends, Saturdays, and using longer daily schedules or shorter daily schedules. So there's a variety of things we're looking at. Again, nothing's locked in yet. Obviously, we believe that there will be some element of physical distancing required when we return to campus. How we do that in a close-knit boarding school will be challenging, but we are looking at what the latest guidelines will be. And one of the ways we're going to do that is by what we call de-densification. And this is de-densifying our various spaces across campus, whether it's our classrooms, our dormitories, our common rooms, our dining hall, the chapel. So, you know, it's sort of the idea of having one seat between every student so that there's more space and less chance for viral transfer. So there's ways to do that. We can make smaller section sizes. We can have different, different meal times. We can use larger classrooms. We can modify our dormitory structure a little bit. That's one of the harder areas to do. One of the things that Connecticut plan suggested was that roommates would be considered sort of a family unit, and so that their health would be sort of tied together. But we are looking at all of these things, and we're fortunate to have such an expansive campus and the ability to do these kinds of things, and a very flexible faculty and staff who are game for this kind of thing. We're also obviously looking at the various limitations to accessing campus and allowing our students to come and go from campus, especially our boarding students and also our employees. Obviously, this would become more and more strict as we move through the different campus wellness levels. And we hope that our students will have freedom to leave campus appropriately at times, especially if they're supervised and maintaining certain practices. But we also want to maintain as much of a we want to have a contained campus if at all possible. So we're looking at a variety of policies there, and also in terms of who can come on campus, visitors, and what the threshold would be for visitors to access campus. One of the wonderful things about Hill is that we have a large portion of day students, over 100 day students who come and go to campus every day. We also have a large number of employees, mostly our staff, who comes to campus each day. And then we also have the families of our residential faculty who either work somewhere else or their children go to a day school or a public school nearby. And so we are looking at how we can support that and make sure that those individuals are healthy, and also taking whatever practices that are necessary to keep our campus safe. So we're definitely looking at that component of our community. Right now, I think many people are curious about how co-curricular programs, especially competitive team sports and contact sports, might proceed in the fall. Our athletics department is very carefully researching this, keeping in touch with our peer schools, with our leagues, with the NCAA to see how they're doing it, and with pro sports. We believe that we may have to modify some of our co-curricular programs. We may have to expand some of our co-curricular programs, like some of our non-contact or non-athletic co-curricular programs. We may have to shift some of the timing, either start them delaying them or possibly moving one season to another season, maybe having some virtual competition in sort of timed events like swimming or running. We think our debate program will be fantastic next year. We have a new debate coach, and that's things that can be done virtually, and we'll certainly be supporting those as much as possible. We are, as I mentioned before, we are looking at varying modes of instruction, and we're looking at as blended learning. We're looking at the possibility that some of our learning will continue online, even if we're on campus, possibly once or twice a week to have an online class. Some students who are ill or under observation may have to participate online, and some faculty who are ill or have underlying conditions or vulnerable might have to participate remotely. So we're looking at that quite carefully. All of our faculty are being trained over the summer to be certified in online learning instruction, even more so than they are now. So we're gearing up for that possibility as well. We do want to note that we have vulnerable community members. We can't just close the gates to campus and expect that everything will be just fine. I mentioned before we have community members that come and go each day, but we also have members of our student body and our employee community that are vulnerable, either because of their age or their underlying conditions, and we want to take that into consideration as well. So there may be a variety of different procedures or practices that we ask our non-vulnerable community members to take for the sake of those who are vulnerable. We are also looking at cohorting. This would be the idea that to minimize the number of intersections or viral networks on campus, we might, for example, have our dormitories eat together, or we might have our, we may house our students according to classroom groups. We may have teachers move from classroom to classroom instead of students moving from classroom to classroom. So we're looking at that also in our employee groups, just to keep if someone does get ill, the size of the network would be smaller if there were less people in contact. We are obviously looking at cloth masks. We think that that will become part of our reality next year, whether we provide them or students provide them, what kind of masks we require, where we require them. We're hopeful that we don't have to require them in classroom settings or dormitory settings, but imagine that in public settings where physical distancing may be difficult or unpredictable, that we would require cloth masks, certainly at the higher levels of our campus wellness framework. We have a subcontracted cleaning service called Moonlighting. They're already here on campus. They are prepared to ramp up into deep cleaning techniques. They're deepening their training and procedures and supplies to be prepared for this. Obviously, there are certain areas on our campus that will be cleaned more regularly than before. We'll also be asking our students and employees to take responsibility for cleaning their personal space at a higher level of frequency and depth. Part of the reason that we believe sort of the gating conditions for schools reopening, all schools reopening, and certainly even going to the green level is the availability of testing. There are really sort of two types of testing available right now: live virus testing and antibody testing, and with varying levels of accessibility and cost and reliability. And as of right now, there's not a whole lot of certainty in terms of what type of immunity and for how long antibodies provide. So we're working closely with our local hospital, with a variety of testing agencies. We're really trying to understand what is out there in terms of virus and antibody testing. We're also looking at the ability for us to do this on-site as well as off-site. And we may be requiring students to have testing done before they return to campus. So that's just something that we're looking at. Routine symptom screening. This could be as frequently as every day. It could be less frequent than that, where it might be a combination of asking 5 or 6 questions about symptoms through an app, or maybe through a dorm parent or a parent at home, as well as temperature screening. There's quite a bit of conflict over whether temperature screening is helpful, since people can be asymptomatic while they still have the virus. So we want to make sure that we're not adding unnecessary layers that really can't help us, but we are looking at that. We're also looking at having either wellness kiosks around campus or thermal scanning cameras. Wellness kiosk would be the kind of thing that you would walk up to, perhaps an employee or a day student. It would take your temperature through infrared thermometer, touchless. You would answer a few questions on the screen and then would go about your business on campus. We've also been testing 2 different thermal scanning cameras. These are similar to what you might see in an international airport when you're coming in from another country. It just maybe 20 or 30 people per second, it can take your temperature. And we're looking at the possibility of using that in some of the entrances to some of our larger facilities or highly trafficked facilities, like a dining hall or one of our academic buildings, or maybe a dormitory or the athletic center. All of this needs to be housed somewhere in terms of your testing information, your symptom information, and your thermal scanning information. So we're looking at credentialing systems. This is sort of another app on your phone where this would be kept up to date, and you could basically scan your phone or swipe your phone to let us know or let your dormitory know, or if as you're entering campus or leaving campus, the state of your health and the last time you were tested or screened or scanned. This is obviously not the way we're used to operating campus, but it's something that we have to consider under the circumstances. So we're researching credentialing, and then also for our visitors coming to campus, to the extent that we will be allowing visitors to come to campus, what the requirements will be in terms of the screening and testing for them as well. To the extent that someone becomes ill on campus, it's going to be very important that we have a system in place to trace the people that they've come in contact with. Obviously, in a residential community like Hill, and a close-knit community, you come into contact with a lot of people. And so that's why we're doing some of the mitigation strategies to first of all, hopefully reduce the chance that anyone has the virus, but also in the event that someone does have the virus, that we can trace quite easily and hopefully minimize the size of the network that they've exposed. As you've probably heard, Google and Apple are hard at work on this, creating a platform for other apps to use to do contact tracing using your GPS phone data. We think that that will be quite helpful, so we're researching some of those third-party apps. We also already have a system on campus called Wave. This is our location app for students, primarily used for when students are leaving campus or during study hall. We're looking to build that out so that we can keep track of where students have been and then use those intersecting points to know who they may have exposed if they're ill. We have our student ID cards, which are required to swipe in and out of most of our buildings on campus. So we have the ability to tap into that data to see where a student or employee has been. We also have a large network of cameras on campus. And so we can go back, over a week of footage to look at where students have been. That could be quite complicated, but we need to prepare for all ways that we could do contact tracing on campus. So to the extent that someone is ill or someone is traced to have had close contact with someone who is ill, we need to separate them from campus until we can determine their health or until they become healthy again. So first and foremost, our primary option would be for students to return home, whether they're local as a day student or within a few hours of campus. That would be the primary option, would be to return home, be under the care of your parents and loved ones, and be comfortable. If you do go home, or if any of these options happen with separation, that's one of the reasons that we're looking at different modes of instruction and different schedules, because we do believe that if our students are ill, their symptoms will be fairly mild, and we want them to continue to participate in the life of the school. We are able to house some students here. We are designating certain facilities on campus as separation facilities. I'm not sure that's what we'll call them. It doesn't sound very appealing. But we have a number of facilities on campus that we're exploring. First of all, we have the guest house on campus, which I believe has 11 beds on campus. We have the wellness center, which also has about 10 to 15 beds. We have a bunk house, which we use usually for visiting athletic teams. It actually has 10 bedrooms with 4 bunk beds in each, so 40 beds and 10 bathrooms. So that's an interesting facility for us. And then we also currently have one faculty house, which is not being used, which we might use as more of a quarantine facility as well. So those are things that are under current consideration for on-campus facilities for students who couldn't return home. We have a great tradition here of host families, especially for our international students. That is a possibility, although it's certainly a lot to ask a host family to take someone in who is ill or under observation. And so we're also looking at professional guardians. This is an industry that exists in some other countries like the UK and in Australia that boarding schools often use. We have not been able to identify sort of a ready-made professional guardian firm yet, but we're looking at it. We're also encouraging perhaps the creation of one not too far from Pottstown, so that if our students can't return home or are too ill to return home, that they could be well cared for locally. And our hope is that we can keep as many people, at least in our time zone, That will give us the most flexibility with our academic program, but it's also why we will probably be modifying our academic schedule or daily schedule so that we could have some flexibility in terms of the time zone. Obviously, having classes at 2 o'clock in the afternoon could be really tough if you're in China or somewhere else altogether. So those are some of our separation ideas. So how does Hill put itself in a good position here? Why are we able to do some of these things perhaps better than others, and perhaps better than other types of schools or colleges and universities? So first of all, I want to emphasize that in my opinion, and certainly from most of the feedback that I've received, Virtual Hill, which we basically created in a few weeks, has been quite successful. It's been rigorous, it's been challenging, it's included a lot of community programming, it's kept our students engaged, our faculty have been committed to it and flexible with it. We think that with extended time over the summer to prepare and to plan, we'll be in an even better place should the need come for us to modulate our program or have some students leave campus. So as I mentioned before, all of our faculty, all of our teaching faculty are participating in a pretty extensive online teaching certification program this summer called Quality Matters. It's custom built just for the Hill. So all of our teachers will be in a much better place to teach online should it come to that next year. We think that also the exposure to that kind of technology will help us while we're on campus as well. I'm especially proud of our health and wellness resources here at the Hill. Dr. Spencer, who many of you know, is a highly experienced ER doctor. She's full-time medical director here at the Hill. We have a large group of nurses and other wellness professionals, including our counseling team, which provides clinical counseling. We don't want to forget the mental health impact that COVID-19 and the isolation of COVID-19 has had on our students, and that some of these mitigation strategies may have on our students as well. So in addition to our staff, we have the Wellness Center here on campus, which is pretty well equipped. We're also less than a mile away from Pottstown Hospital, and we have an excellent relationship with Pottstown Hospital, which has been further strengthened over the last few months as we've provided them with critical personal protective equipment that they were in need of. So we've deepened our relationship there. We have expansive facilities here. So as we look to de-densify campus and increase physical distancing, we're fortunate that we have a fantastic campus with large spaces and ample spaces. I mean, that we already had very small section sizes, averaging about 12 students per class, and in some cases fewer than that. It just so happens that we'll be opening the Shirley Quadrivium Center in September, which adds to our already expansive facilities. And we've renewed the lease on our temporary building, which was being used as a science building during the current year. So that gives us even more room to spread out. And we're examining different ways to use that modular space. So it just so happens that we had it on campus, and many campuses are scrambling right now to purchase or lease those kinds of facilities. And so we were fortunate that we already had it. I mentioned the Shirley Quadrivium Center. That was on pause while the shutdown was in place, but we restarted construction on May 1st, and that will be done on July 31st. And so it will be open in September for our students. So we do have pretty expansive facilities, as well as our dormitories. And our dining hall was just renovated a year ago. It gives us a lot of flexibility if we have to move from seated meals to buffet meals or takeaway meals. We have the kitchen is state of the art, very strong hygiene practices and sanitary practices. We're fortunate to be partnered with Sodexo, one of the largest and best food services companies in the world, and they've been a great partner for us. So we'll have the ability to feed our entire community quite easily and with a lot of flexibility. Our campus is, we're the Hill School, so we're up on a hill. So the secluded nature of our campus works to our favor in this situation. And we already have a large campus security presence in place. We actually have one of the largest campus security per capita of all the boarding schools. And if need be, we can improve that just to make sure that we are screening visitors, that people who aren't supposed to be on campus are not on campus, and that if our students or employees are leaving campus, that they can check out or check in. Although Montgomery County itself was one of the sort of original hotspots, we are quite distant from some of the major hotspots in the United States. You know, some of our peer schools are located in, you know, in New York or in Connecticut or in New Jersey, closer to some of the epicenters of COVID-19. And so we're fairly removed from that. So that could work to our advantage. There is a range of boarding schools in the United States and even in Pennsylvania. We're fortunate that about 75% of our students are boarding students. And on top of that, most of our domestic boarding students are primarily regional. They come from, yes, we come from, you know, over 30 states, but a large portion of our students are from within 100 miles. So that allows us to get students home more quickly, be more flexible, and also be dealing with fewer states in terms of their own COVID recovery. So that works to our advantage. Almost our entire faculty, I think but one, lives right on campus. So that is an advantage to us so that they can stay safe within our community. To date, most of our faculty is still here on campus. We've had no cases of COVID-19. Our faculty has been very careful, both in terms of their interactions with each other and their interactions off campus. So that also is an advantage for us. We're fully enrolled for next year. We anticipate a opening enrollment of between 520 and 525 students. That also bodes well in terms of the financial strength of the school and our ability to vary our programs and make sure that we're able to support with resources the kinds of things that I've talked about tonight. One of the things that we are already planning, I know that we have a lot of new families on the webcast tonight, and I know some of you may be concerned that if we don't open on campus right away, or if we have to close campus at some point, that you might not feel part of the community like the way our students in Virtual Hill this spring already felt closely connected to their classmates and teachers. So we are beginning in June, we're going to accelerate and expand the orientation of our new students. Students will have an opportunity to get to know not just their advisor or maybe one or two older students, but also students within their class. And it's going to be sort of an affinity group program around shared interests. It'll be fun, but it'll be a way to get to know, a dozen or more students in your grade, or maybe in your dorm, or maybe from the town you're from. So we're looking at that, and we'll be getting information to you about that soon. As our current families know, and many of our new families might also know, we were the first boarding school to provide a refund this spring, a partial refund, when we announced the closure of campus. Even before we had determined that we were going to be closed for the entire spring, we issued the refund to all of our families. In addition to being the first school to do it, it was the most generous of any school that I've come across in terms of the size of the refund. And we based it on our savings. And so we are developing a financial model now that in the event that we do have to close for any period of time, that we would pass along the savings of closure directly to our students and to our students' families. So obviously, if we're not here on campus, we will pass those savings along to you, and we want you to know that. And lastly, we have a fantastic constituency that supports the school in a number of ways, not the least of which is philanthropically. Our alumni and parents and past parents and board of trustees have been very generous to the school over many, many years. We've built up a large endowment which has a rainy day fund in the event of emergencies that we can tap into. We try not to tap into that, but even today, our Hill Fund and Parent Fund has been very strongly performing even through the last few months, and our endowment is actually performing comparatively well to other investments because our investment strategy has been quite diverse and thoughtful and prepared for this kind of thing. I know I've been talking for a while. We're almost to the point for questions, and I'm sure you have quite a few. Here is the timeline that we're looking at right now. So I mentioned May 1st is when construction resumed on campus. I'm not sure that's that exciting to all of you, but we do want our campus to be prepared. And as I mentioned, having the Shirley Quadrivium Center online by September 1st is going to be very important in terms of our ability to maintain physical distancing and de-densification of our classrooms. I toured the building today. It looks fantastic. Can't wait to welcome everyone back to that facility. Today, the first part of Pennsylvania, the first counties in Pennsylvania reopened, moved to yellow phase. May 29th is the end of Virtual Hill. I'm sure that will be an exciting day for everyone. Of course, May 23rd is our virtual graduation. We do hope to bring our sixth form back for an on-campus graduation sometime in July or August, but I don't have a date yet, so I didn't put it on the calendar. As of right now, I think perhaps the latest that Montgomery County will open is June 4th. We're hopeful that it won't be any later than that. We believe it could be sooner than that, but that's sort of the tentative date for moving to yellow. We don't know when we'd move to green. That relies on a number of different factors, not all of which have been revealed to us as a county. In mid-July, we will be releasing those continuity plans that we're working so hard on, much more than just concepts. There will be spreadsheets and guidelines and essentially a new handbook for next year. So we hope to release that sometime around July 15th, maybe a little later, hopefully sooner if we can. We're timing that so you have obviously some time before the first major tuition payment, which is August 1st, is the due date. We want to be respectful of that. As of right now, we don't anticipate any changes to our enrollment contract. We hope that you'll be able to make a good decision at that point, and we hope that we'll be ready to resume activities on campus soon thereafter. I mentioned before that we might have a potential early arrival for some students as early as the beginning of August. Again, don't hold me to these dates. These are just placeholders for now. As of right now, our athletic preseason begins for football on August 24th and for other sports on August 28th. That is very much in flux. Whether we have a preseason or whether all of our students are back at that point and we just move into academics and co-curriculars per normal, to be determined. And obviously when we release our full plan to mid-July, we'll let you know. As of right now, the first day of classes, I believe is September 8th. So students typically arrive a few days before that, new and returning students. And so those dates may hold. But again, we could accelerate, we could start earlier, we could start a little bit later, but we're working on all of those dates for you now. So I've obviously shared a lot of information. I hope I've answered some of your questions. I am going to pull up the questions here. I'm going to pause my share so you can hopefully see me a little bit better. Is that a little bit better there? All right, so I have a number of questions here in written form, which I'll get to. Also, a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please, you can also raise your hand and I can make you live. That's a little bit more fun. So we'll get to those kinds of questions as well. So the first question here is, will students be required to have a COVID vaccination? So obviously there is no vaccination yet, but we do anticipate that that could be sometime in 2021 when that would come online. Our sense is that we would require all members of our community to have a COVID vaccination. We currently require other vaccinations. There is an opt-out for medical or religious reasons. We haven't gotten that far in our analysis yet with respect to the COVID vaccination, but we will certainly be strongly encouraging it, if not requiring it. So we'll get there. A question from one of our international families: what happens if we are not able to get the F1 visa in September in China? The nearest date for visa appointment is November 2020. Please contact me offline about that. Some of our families have been able to get visa appointments sooner than that, in July. If you are unable to get the F1 visa, we would obviously find a way for you to begin classes. That's one of the reasons why we're looking at different modes of instruction. So you could begin remotely and then join us when you can. We're hopeful that we'll be able to get most of our students their visas in time. Obviously, our returning students already have their visas, and we've been given some flexibility, or all schools have been given flexibility by SEVIS, that even if those have technically expired because you've been out of the country for 5 months, that they will allow you to return at that point. The next question is, have you thought on the possibility to keep online classes or having both options, normal and online at the same time, until a vaccine is in place? That is certainly one of the scenarios that we're evaluating. It's not one that we are, quite frankly, expecting to be in. But we do think that there will be some portion of our students who may or may not be able to be on campus at the beginning of the year, like the last question I responded to in terms of international students. There may even be some domestic travel restrictions still in place, or a student or an adult that becomes ill, who has to leave campus or go to one of our separation facilities that would have to participate online. So yes, the answer is we do anticipate a blended learning approach where all of our classes would be both online and offline, live and online, so that everyone can continue to participate regardless of where they are. So that's a bit more of a collegiate model. When will students be allowed to return to campus to retrieve their personal items? This is a question we get probably 5 times a day. John Genikis, our Dean of Community Life, they're working on this already for our international and distant sixth form boarders, who we don't anticipate will be able to come back. We cannot allow this until we're at least in phase yellow. So it could still be another week or 2 before we start allowing that. And even in phase yellow, we'll have to schedule that in a phased approach so that there's a reduced, it's still aggressive mitigation at that point. So we'll have to reduce that risk. A comment, a big thank you for your leadership. You're quite welcome. We appreciate the faculty having to adjust on the fly as well. A job well done keeping the Hill family together. I couldn't agree more. This is Teacher Appreciation Week. I showed that video at the beginning of the webcast. Our faculty has done an incredible job. I'm so grateful to all of them. I only wish that I could give them a big hug and a big handshake to say thank you right now. But we do see each other as we walk across, unfortunately, an empty campus. And it's been great to encourage each other and to see the impact. So thank you for that comment. Will day students have access to the facilities over the summer? I don't have the answer to that. If we're in yellow, the answer to that will probably be no. If we're in green, we might begin to open up campus in that way. But our challenge is that we want to maintain a healthy campus until the last possible moment, so that when our students, our core mission begins in the fall, that we're as healthy as possible. So until we have all of our screening and testing in place and all of our mitigation strategies, we're probably going to be limiting all campus visitors as much as possible, or at least non-essential campus visitors. We have already canceled all of our summer programs and rentals for campus, so that to some extent answers your question. How do you intend to handle placement tests for math and/or foreign language? The same way that we've always handled them. Those tests are done online, or they're done on paper and submitted by email. We don't have students come to campus for that. We might add a Zoom component to those. I haven't had a chance to talk to Mr. Benzinen or Ms. Kokoska yet about how they plan to modify those in any ways, but rest assured that we will continue to prepare our students for next year and their placement. Great presentation, thank you. I missed the first 14 minutes. Did you speak about packing up dorms for the current year? I didn't, but I just did in one of these questions. For anyone who joined late, well, we are recording this and we'll be posting it live along with a number of FAQs and perhaps the PowerPoint presentation that I used as well. Next question, will there be a parent weekend? I sure hope so. I don't know the answer to that yet. Obviously, it increases the risk of exposure and different vectors on campus to bring in upwards of 200 or 300 families to campus. Perhaps we'll shift that to the spring. when things are hopefully in better shape across the country and certainly here on campus. So we'll just have to wait and see on that one. We did have to cancel Grandparents' Weekend this spring, which was probably a good idea, considering some of the age of our grandparents. And in fact, none of our students were here, so it would have been sort of boring for the grandparents. When will the online store be reopening? I did not know that it was closed. If you're talking about the online store for like the bookstore, I will find out from Sodexo who operates that, and we'll make sure that gets reopened. Right now, Sodexo is not on campus, so that may be why it's closed, in which case we can try to reopen it. All right, I have a hand up, which is always my favorite thing to do. So I am going to, it is Mary Jo. Mary Jo, hold on one second. Mary Jo, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Would you like to come on video?
I'm on video.
Hey, there she is. Hi, Mary Jo. How are you?
Hi, very good. Thank you.
Good to see you.
It's very nice to see you as well. So first, I want to thank you because I thought this was an excellent presentation with great information, and we look forward to having more of this as we move forward.
Sure.
My question to you is, you know, the virtual Hill experience, the children are going through this for the first time, and I'm sure that there's some really interesting insights that they have about how this has worked. And I'm wondering how we might incorporate some of their feedback into the planning for next year.
Sure. Well, first of all, where is Wes and Callie? Are they there tonight? Can I say hi?
Stuart will go grab them. We'll bring them in.
All right, good. So while I'm answering your question, he'll go pull them away from their video games or whatever they're doing.
Homework. They were actually doing homework.
Homework, right. Friday night, of course. So obviously we did some surveying earlier in the year, earlier in Virtual Hill after I think the first 2 weeks, just to get feedback from students, and we made some adjustments. I believe there's a survey that's actually about to go out again to students and to parents and to our faculty, and so we will continue to do that, and we'll be looking at some of the other metrics, you know, like our AP testing scores, our grades, and evaluating all of that. But we certainly think that there are those silver linings to this, that we're learning things, our faculty are learning new technology, new pedagogies that we think will be quite useful next year. And that's why we're designing the certification to do that as well.
Yeah, I think the training will be really helpful because this has been new for everyone, and kudos to you for standing it up so quickly.
Yeah.
So that's excellent.
I saw Wes. There's Callie. Hi, Callie. Callie, say hello to 213 families on the line. Hi, Wes.
Wesley and Callie, doing homework, weren't you?
Yeah.
On a Friday night.
Wesley, I see you haven't had a quarantine haircut yet either. I have. I've had one today. Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too, Zach.
Bye-bye. All right. That was fun. All right. Next question. Any advice to the new international students who will be late in getting F1 visas? Again, my understanding was we worked on this several weeks ago with our international families, that they were able to get appointments. If they aren't able to get appointments, we will do everything we can to help you. We have some good on-the-ground contacts in China and Hong Kong and in other countries, and we'll do everything we can on that front. We can also potentially work with some of our, with U.S. Senator Toomey, who's here, who has a child here at the Hill. He has been helpful in the past with some visa issues, so we'll do what we can. Next question. Even though Hill is closely monitoring boarding students, how are you going to make sure day students and their family are also practicing safe measures? Thank you for that question. Well, and it doesn't just apply to day students, it also applies to our staff who are coming and going each day. And so we'll be creating guidelines and expectations, and that's where some of the screening may come in. So as day student, one example could be that before day students leave their home each day, they may have to take their temperature or complete a symptoms check on an app that we're collecting the data from, and then they may have to do that again when they arrive on campus. And one of the great things about the Hill School is that our students are used to pretty strict rules and an honor code, and hopefully they're looking out for the best interest of our entire community. And so we're hopeful that everyone would be able to do that. And that also could be testing. You know, if testing is readily available, we'll be testing people with some frequency to make sure that everyone is healthy and well. Does Hill plan to provide cloth masks to its students this coming fall? If then, what kind? Can you show a sample of a mask? I don't have an answer to that just yet, but let me do something fun here. If you could, raise your hand if you'd like to provide your own mask. All right. That's a lot of you. Almost, so far, about 30%, I would say. So, and it's probably still growing. People are probably still figuring out how to raise their hand. Okay, you can stop raising your hand. So there are different ideas here. It could be that students come with, you know, some number of masks, 7, 10, 15 masks, and that they go through the laundry service or through the athletic laundry service, and you get back your own masks. It could be that we just provide every student with 15 masks per week, and they get back a washed and sanitized mask. It could be that we will provide masks and you have to purchase them online, and they'll be waiting for you when you arrive. There's a number of different options out there. We've been bombarded with offers to purchase branded masks with the Hill on them. Also, you know, there may be some fashion that goes into these things where people want to have their own masks and have a little personality behind them. So we're going to have to wait and see. One of the concerns that we have is that for those of you who have been using masks over the last few months is that you know, young people especially need to read facial cues, and to have a mask on in all settings can be very isolating and make it more difficult to have develop relationships with their peers and with adults. And so we're hopeful that we can be in a condition where masks only have to be worn in situations where you can't create physical distancing and you're putting others at risk. Are you planning to introduce advisors earlier too? Yes, that's our plan. We hope to introduce advisors early in June so you can develop that relationship. That's a process that's already, we're already working on those assignments. Thank you. So helpful to hear all of this, and we really appreciate your time. When the flu ran through campus last fall, did you have the ability to test for COVID? Tempting to think our kids might have already been exposed and had it, especially if we learn that having it once confers any kind of lasting immunity. It's a great question. The answer is no. We did not have COVID testing on campus, even as late as, you know, just before spring break. Our spring break, you know, was before COVID testing. My understanding, maybe we did a little bit we did a little bit of COVID testing right before spring break, but certainly not when we had the big flu outbreak. So I had the flu this year. I got tested positive for the flu. It's possible it was COVID-19, but I don't know. But certainly, as studies develop around immunity and antibodies, we're going to want to be very closely connected to that research. Is everyone required to be tested before going to the Hill? As I mentioned before, that is a possibility. It may be a possibility that you be tested before you come to Hill in the fall or in late summer, and then upon arrival. The Connecticut plan was requiring testing upon arrival and then remaining in isolation until your test results came back. And if the test results were positive, you would have to remain isolated for 14 days. If they were negative, you could resume or begin campus activities. So that may be the model. Again, I won't have a concrete answer until mid-July, but we are definitely thinking about that. And that's probably one of those gating conditions, certainly for any sort of international travel that we're going to want to have. 8/1 to 8/10 early arrival means dorm opening from 8/1 as well, isn't it? Possibly. We have, again, those are just placeholders. I don't want to make any promises that we will be open at that time or that we will be expecting people to arrive at that time. So we're hopeful to get you that information sooner. Obviously, if we don't tell you until mid-July that you have to be here on August 1st, that doesn't give you a lot of time to plan. So if we plan to open campus earlier, we will let you know that. But we would probably house you in our dormitories. there are some other options as well. But if you do come earlier, you would likely have to quarantine for 14 days. So you may want to, we may talk about other options and places for that to happen. How will you proceed for the students' belongings? Thank you for your great work. I think I've answered this question already. We're working on it. There's also a possibility that we won't, we may keep the students' belongings here and use that quarantining time for students to pack up and move to another room on campus or an extended orientation time. As you can imagine, packing rooms for nearly 400 students is quite an undertaking. Even for the international sixth formers, it's been quite an undertaking. It takes several hours just to inventory the rooms and then to pack them carefully and to ship them. So thank you to all the Hill faculty and staff. You're quite welcome. Once students are back to school, will dorm students take orderly turns to use shower rooms so that crowding could be minimized? I would imagine the answer to that is going to be yes. We may have sort of scheduled shower times. We do have group bathrooms, not individual bathrooms. So we're working on that. Notably, the Connecticut plan, that was the one area that they didn't address, which was bathrooms and showers. They're working on that one still. All right, we have some hands up. We're going to go to the hands. That's always more fun. Okay, here we go. 1 second. Kathy Carney, are you there? Kathy, can you hear me? Kathy? Okay, that was, we tried. Oh, there you are. Kathy, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I wasn't going to ask a question.
Oh, your hand was up. Maybe that was just left.
Oh, it was from before. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Do you want to ask
But I
a
will
question?
take the opportunity to say thank you so much.
Oh,
It
sure.
appears that you guys have worked so hard, and I could not be happier. And I think Mallory feels the same way.
Well, give my best to Mallory, and thanks for raising your hand. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. We do have 2 other hands up. I'm not sure if they're real hands, so I'll try. Hold on. Gene Short, are you there?
Yes, this is Gene Short, Winthrop Short speaking on her behalf.
Okay. You have a question?
Yes, sir. So first and foremost, thank you on the accessibility, the level of preparedness that you provided, and the level of transparency. I think it's outstanding. Do you anticipate being able to share more written documentation on the Hills phases and gates, the Alpha, Bravo, Delta, Charlie, Zulu? Just thinking more along the lines of what the federal government has provided and many state and regional state governments, regional areas have provided on their reopening plans, or what we see through many corporations. Just curious on our ability to see more substance behind your thinking on how one transitions up and down on that continuum.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And we're pleased to be able to provide that transparency. That's exactly what we anticipate sharing in mid-July. A very thorough plan and report with charts and procedures and guidelines, and also an agreement between with students and employees about returning to school and returning to work, to make sure that it's not just us who's making these representations, but also our students, to confirm that they and their families understand that as well. So we will be providing that. I want to make sure that we're not providing it too early, because I don't want it to change dramatically after everyone sort of memorized it or learned from it. We are also exchanging these kinds of documents regularly with our peer schools and with other agencies and associations. And we're trying to learn from some of the publications that have already happened. I spent some time online today looking at Johns Hopkins has published some things. My alma mater, Dartmouth, is publishing some things. So we're looking carefully at some of the things that are already out there, and hoping to grab the things that are best about them and add our own. And so we're in quite a sharing mode right now.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Good to hear you. All right. We have another hand up. Let's see if this is a real hand. This is Chong Chen. Can you hear me? Are you there?
I'm sorry, that was a mistake.
It's a mistake? Okay. Good to hear your voice anyway. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to lower all the hands because I think those are leftovers. Okay, back to some of the written questions. There's no lack of them here. Have you considered having classes outside when feasible, according to teachers and students' preferences? The answer to that is yes. What a great idea. We have some wonderful spaces on campus for outdoor classes. We are investigating, some outdoor structures as well. And so that will certainly be a possibility, as well as using some of our, I would say, non-classroom space, but large gathering spaces, things like lobbies or common rooms or conference rooms or auditoriums, and the chapel, the dining hall, just things that allow us to de-densify and spread out a little bit more. But hopefully the weather will be great in the fall. It's been beautiful here until today. And so we'll do our best to get outside as much as possible. When will placement tests and class section selection be sent out? I don't have the exact date for that, but my hope is that it'll be quite soon. But thank you for asking, and I'll make sure that information gets out to all of our new students. Would students from hard-hit areas like New York be required to take a COVID or antibody test before returning to campus? That's a great question. I don't think we're going to require students from certain areas to take tests and other areas to not take tests. My guess is we will probably require all students to take tests upon arrival or before returning. But it's possible that, if a student is coming from a very low level area that has very little spread, that maybe they don't have to take a test beforehand, or if they're already in Pennsylvania or in one of the counties here. So, but we do anticipate that there will be testing, periodic, regular testing. How frequently, we don't yet know, and how it will be conducted, we don't yet know. Thank you for this session. Super helpful for new families. Your planning thus far is very comforting. You're quite welcome. Thanks for coming tonight. What is the likelihood 2 parents will be allowed on campus in the fall to move in students? Has any alternative been discussed? That's a great question. We haven't gotten that far yet. Who knows? It does create an extra level of complexity. Again, I keep referring to this Connecticut plan. Obviously, those are mostly college students. They don't go into that level of detail. But I do think that we'll probably try to use a phased approach, bringing students in phases, whether that's by form or by geographic region, possibly having our preseason athletes come back sooner if we have that type of activity. So it's yet to be determined, but I imagine our older students will do their share in terms of helping our new and younger students set up their rooms. We do have a company called Dorm Movers that's very helpful with our students in terms of moving out of the dorms at the end of the year, and also delivering their packages to their rooms at the beginning of the year. So we may use them in the fall. So thank you for the suggestion. When will the outlook plans for freshmen, third formers, be defined well enough so that families can do the difficult job of trading off the traditional appeal of boarding school with health concerns and travel logistics, especially if the student is coming from far away? I don't imagine that we will be able to provide a different planning dates for our third formers as opposed to returning students. Maybe your question was more about new students versus returning students. I still think mid-July is not only the soonest that we can complete those plans, but probably the soonest that it makes sense to complete those plans. Things are changing so rapidly within our state, within our country, within our world, in terms of the science, in terms of the testing, in terms of the immunity research. I would hate to create a plan that was more strict than it needed to be, only to find out a couple of weeks later that we were able to have students on campus or make our programs even more relaxed. So I'm sorry. I know. I have 3 children of my own, and I know that we'd all like to know the answers today, but I just don't have them. I'm sorry. For the travel bans around the world, what plans do you have for people who can't make it? So we do hope that the travel bans will be lifted. I do hope that our students will be able to travel domestically, internationally, and And that's why we're also trying to create some more flexibility in August, so students might be able to arrive earlier or have, not have to be here by an exact date, and have more flexibility to get on a flight when they can. Again, if a student can't arrive either because of a visa or because of a travel restriction, we will allow them to participate online. That's why we're considering different modes of instruction. One of the things to consider here is that when there was the shutdown in Pennsylvania, the colleges and boarding schools apparently were allowed to have international students remain on campus. So in the event that we do have to shut down, that is also one of the considerations that we're thinking about, which is allowing a limited number of students who don't have local guardians or who can't get home to stay on campus and potentially consolidate into 1 or 2 dormitories. One of our peer schools in Pennsylvania, the Greer School, which is an all-girls boarding school out in the Pittsburgh area, still has 90 students on their campus, international students, who couldn't go home and are waiting till June to go home. So that is something we're also considering. Has your team discussed the possibility of requiring day students to remain virtual in order to create a truly closed campus? It's something we're considering. I don't think it's a high likelihood. Even if we could close campus to our day students, we still have our staff, we still have our residential employees who have family or children who go to school off campus. I think the notion of a fortress is quite difficult. Every airline company has reduced flight lines and schedules. Thus, if it is not easy to buy international airline tickets, if it is available. With the current information, would it be best to buy an airplane ticket so as to arrive at Hill on August 1st? The answer to that is not yet. Please don't do that yet. We do not know that we will be open on August 1st. So please don't do that yet. We will do our best to get you information as soon as we can. Thank you and the staff for all of your hard work and leadership. Okay, this one is from a student. She said, I don't have to read this out loud, but I'm gonna read it out loud anyway. This is Coco. She's one of our alumni and has a younger sister here at the Hill. Just wanted to say thank you for keeping us so well informed with updates. It's super helpful. And also I miss you all and hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. We miss you too. It would be nice if the school did have extra masks. They are still kids, but the parents might also have differentiating ideas, or differing, I can't say the word, ideas of safety. Okay, good. We will certainly have extra masks. We have quite a few masks on hand, and we will add to our stock. Branded masks are a bad idea, my point of view. Okay, good. Are you considering providing additional time off for students to visit college campuses since opportunities thus far have been very limited? Thank you. Haven't gotten there yet. My sense is that, to the extent possible, we're probably going to keep a contained campus. And so visiting college campuses might be a challenge. And my guess is that college campuses aren't going to be allowing a lot of visitors either. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. What type of restrictions or protocols do you anticipate for parents, families, or other visitors to campus? I've talked a little bit about this. So we have different categories of visitors. We have sort of our regular campus visitors, people that like delivery people that bring packages to campus or other items to campus on a regular basis. So we would probably pre-screen those people and have credentials similar to like our day students, that sort of thing. We would have a kiosk that they'd have to take their temperature and pass the symptom tests, that sort of thing. We have more periodic visitors. We have visitors from other schools. We have admission visitors. We have college counseling, admissions counselor visits. So we'll have a variety of visitor policies, different categories, but you can rest assured that no one's going to come onto our campus who hasn't passed a number of our screening expectations or that is known as well. So, is the fall sport field hockey considered a contact sport? Do you think my child will still be able to participate in the fall? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Our athletic director, you can certainly reach out to Coach Weisbach, our field hockey coach, or to Mr. Eilberg. And and I haven't said that contact sports aren't going to happen. We are looking into all of those things, and it may be that they might be delayed. It may be that they, some people have talked about switching seasons, have fall sports played in the spring. Maybe they won't be played. We don't know the answer to that yet. We're looking for guidance from different sports associations, from the NCAA, from public health. But field hockey has limited contact, probably, certainly not deliberate contact. So that might be less complicated than, let's say, football or wrestling, those kinds of sports. Will you be having a separate roundtable for the sixth form parents? We have a lot of questions about the upcoming end of year events. We actually are planning to send a number of documents to our sixth form parents very, very soon with the schedule for the end of the year events, as well as for the potential on-campus graduation in July or August. We can have a roundtable for sixth form parents. We could schedule that for next week. So we'll work on that. Thank you for the question. So informative and needed to begin to make students have optimism that they will return. Glad to help. Would there ever be a consideration of making the day students stay on campus as boarders? So this is sort of the opposite question before. That is a possibility. We've talked about it. We currently don't have enough space to do that without obviously making triples. We don't have, we've talked a little bit about converting the modular building to a dormitory for separation space. But we have 130 day students registered for next year. So that would be a pretty substantial addition to our campus. But it's something to consider for sure. Great presentation, very informational. Is it possible, or is it already your plan to do this regularly going forward? We can do it. I probably won't do it every week, but we could certainly do it again, maybe every few weeks or maybe every month. All right, there's a lot of thank yous here, so I'll skip some of those. We're happy to thank you for your thank you, and I will pass those along to my colleagues who are really doing the heavy lifting. Have you had any insight into what other Maple schools are doing, Maple being the Mid-Atlantic Prep School League? Will you make decisions together regarding schedules and games in the fall? We are on a regular call with all of the Maple heads weekly, including some of the other Mid-Atlantic boarding schools that aren't in the Maple. We're in contact more frequently than that. Our athletic directors are in contact weekly with athletic directors for all of our leagues. And so the answer is yes, we will be making decisions together, but every school is going to have to make their own decisions because some schools are in different locations, in different counties, different states, and have different populations. Some schools are all boarding, some schools have more day than boarding, and so some schools are K through 12 or 6 through 12. We can't all, it's not a one size fits all approach. The next question is, what is your current expectation of changes of varsity sports next year? For example, as for soccer, less games, less practice times per week, something like that. The answer to that is we don't know, but we're certainly looking at everything. There may be more conditioning and training, and we'll get to that as soon as we can. Someone complimented my haircut. You're welcome. Will parents be allowed to recommended to observe some virtual classes? Would it bother teachers or students if parents observe online classes? I don't know the answer to that question, but it's a good one. I'll talk to our academic dean and see if that's something they might want to do. Please, if you can, a shout out for efforts to acquire convalescent immunoglobulins. That's a tough word for me to say. It is a joint effort of many companies, including Takeda, leading it, but it has been endorsed very highly by Congress. If anyone knows of someone who would donate their blood to help research and other patients, please kindly do so. Thank you for that recommendation. We'll look into it. If a student has a car, would they be able to arrive on campus by themselves to minimize people traffic? I think that's probably likely. You mean a day student? Or do you mean a boarding student? Oh, that's a bigger question. Possibly, we might be able to have that and then have the car left, at a far parking lot or something like that. We'll include that in some of our planning process. Thank you. As new parents, we greatly appreciate the time that has been spent by you in the Hill community to begin to prepare for the upcoming school year, which is looking like a unique experience. But we hope our son Hunter has a normal experience as possible. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for this wonderful session. But don't you think Cornell is better than Dartmouth? I will not answer that question. We are currently in the US still waiting for flights to return to China and get visas in China, but have concerns that we may not be able to get back on time in September. Would you advise us to go back to China at all, or better stay on until September? Thank you. I don't know the answer to that question. If you're already in the United States and you can get your visa here, I would definitely try to stay if you're comfortable, and it certainly eliminates some complexity. We know the calendar is not set yet for 2021. Should students return home for Thanksgiving break, would you consider moving to remote learning for the few weeks in between winter holiday break? The answer to that is yes, we're definitely considering a longer Thanksgiving break and not having students come back. That might be the height of flu season, so we may be changing, as I mentioned, our schedule around. So that's a good idea. I think most of these questions have been answered. Oh, are all the dorms double rooms, or in some cases, are they singles, triples, or quads? We mostly have double rooms. We have a small percentage of single rooms and a very small percentage of triple rooms. We will probably stick with that. We don't have the ability to really move to all single rooms. The Connecticut plan suggested, as I mentioned before, family units, viewing roommates as family units, and that you might use single rooms for those who have pre-existing conditions or are vulnerable. So we will look at that. Will you be having the SAT on campus in August and September? I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry. Masks can give folks a sense of protection, and that's understandable. It has been repeated by CDC that hand washing is much more important. Is the school planning to increase the hand sanitizing stations around campus? That I can answer. The answer is yes. We are obviously installing hand sanitizer stations throughout campus, as well as hand washing stations throughout campus. So we're working on that as we speak. When will new students find out who their roommates are? Will there be a fall preseason for tennis? Roommates will come out later in the summer, and I don't know about tennis. We've talked about that. Are you going to stop food delivery to campus if you return, like Grubhub and DoorDash? We were already planning to do that, so the answer is certainly going to be yes on that. Sorry, everybody. Suppose you are positively able to notice in early July that Hill will arrive early on August 1st. Further, imagine that international airline tickets are not available in August and September from my country to USA. What would be the best option for my child? Online class attendance for the time being? The answer to that is probably. We're going to do our best to get you that information as soon as we can, and hope that the airlines are cooperative. We recognize that it's going to be a complex situation. We're doing everything we can to get you information, but I wouldn't want you to buy an airline ticket, or at least a non-refundable airline ticket, only to find out that we can't open our campus on August 1st. So if you can buy a ticket now that's refundable, and maybe I would shoot a little later in August, like August 15th, that might be a good idea. But I'll leave that up to you, and you can certainly send me an email afterwards. One last question: will they make laundry service mandatory? I don't know if we're going to do that. Probably not. We also still want to encourage our students to learn how to do their own laundry, and we are improving our laundry facilities on campus for our students. So that will be that. I want to thank you all for making the time. This 90 minutes is probably enough on a Friday night. I'm really glad that you spent the time here tonight. I hope I've answered a lot of your questions and reassured you about our planning process. I know we don't have all the answers. I wish we did, and I wish we had a crystal ball to be able to tell you what is upcoming. We're doing our very, very best. Thanks for being here tonight. We'll follow up. We'll post this online. We'll do a FAQ, and we'll share that, and we'll try to do this more frequently. In the meantime, thanks for being here tonight. I do want to just close with one thing. For 169 years, the Hill has stood the test of time. Through wars, the Spanish flu epidemic of 1918, a purchase by the alumni to save the school from financial disaster, near closure during the Great Depression, natural disasters, campus fires, the Great Recession, and more. We will come out on the other side of this pandemic as well. Our community is strong, supportive, caring, compassionate, and considerate, and which is why we've been able to survive even the most trying of times. Thank you for sticking with us. All my best to you and yours as you remain healthy and well in this time, and we look forward to staying in touch. Have a great night. Thanks for joining us.